Thank you, Andrew. Empower Texans was an excellent organization to work with. They were always there available to talk about conservative issues, conservative policies, and ideas about how to make things more conservative. Andrew, I'm pleased to report that the bill that you were talking about, although it didn't come out of committee, we were able to do an in-run and get it attached to the budget. It passed out of the House, and the Senate stripped it off. And one of the things, I guess I am, if anything, is pretty stubborn. So when we had our special session and had the budget again, we attached it to the budget again, and I got so many votes in the House the first time for that amendment that the chairman of the Appropriations Committee didn't even oppose it the second time. That amendment was attached to the budget bill, Senate Bill 1. The first go-round, we had about a 22-hour debate on that budget, and the powers in the House said we don't want to dirty up this bill with a bunch of amendments. And a lot of people pulled out. We had 300 amendments that were in the hopper, and a lot of people started pulling their amendments down. I said, guys, I can't pull this down. And that amendment, after about 3 or 4 hours of debate, is the very first amendment that was approved by the House on the budget. So the majority of the House actually liked the amendment. The majority of the Senate actually liked the amendment. The way the sausage is made in Austin, we don't really strip that into we need to have transparency. Amen. Folks, I can tell you that there's a lot of powers that be in Austin that don't think like reasonable people. We come in and we talk about transparency in government, we talk about efficiency, we talk about honesty and integrity. It was a surprise to hear that there are a lot of folks that are elected in Austin that don't come to those kind of motivations. Those are the kind of people that folks like Andrew and Empower Texans helps identify and helps to root out. So, Andrew, on behalf of myself and Hopkins County, I just want to thank Michael Prince Sullivan and the other folks in the organization for really carrying the banner. These guys are really good at identifying fraud and fake and doing the job. I don't usually spend a lot of time thanking people, because if I did, it'd take the whole time to say that. But there's somebody I need to recognize tonight that was there with me in the ruling campaign, day in, day out, pushing me out when I didn't want to go. I just want to take a moment and say thank you to my wife.
Yeah. Amen.
I would wake up some morning and say, oh, I'm tired. She says, get out of bed, you're not going to do all this. She really was a very good support. I just kind of want to give you an idea of what happened down in Austin. And as you all probably know. Can you hear me okay? No, this is that better? No, I can talk loud. Is that? Yeah. Okay. We'll try. When we first went down to Austin, the very first vote we took was the very first day of session, the day we were sworn in. And we had to vote on a speaker, because the speaker basically controls the agenda in the House. And if the speaker really doesn't want something to happen, it doesn't really happen. And there was a hot speaker race. The speaker that we had, Joe Strauss, although a very, very nice guy, is just not the kind of conservative material that a lot of us conservatives were looking for. Amen. And some of us had the, what word am I looking for? Some of us actually got in trouble in Austin because we went to Austin intending to do what we said we were going to do, and we did what we said we were going to do.
And one of those things was that we were not going to vote for Judge Strauss's seat. And, you know, the House floor was full of people on swearing in. I mean, we had chairs stacked up beside the desk. The gallery was full. I guess there was 1,000, 1,200 people in that house. And we had to vote right then on the speaker. 15 of us did not. And to be honest with you, it was pretty liberating. I mean, you know, I was a marked man from then, so it didn't matter how I voted. I was already voting. But you know, we actually accomplished a lot of things. If we did anything, it was to change the conversation in Austin that conservatives really could make a stand for conservative principles.
Amen. Amen.
And that proved to a lot of people that you can make a stand and come out of that thing unscathed. Now you can see that they didn't eat me after that. They tried to eat me, but I guess I was too bitter. I don't know. A lot of us took that stand. We held to those principles, and we had a pretty good session. One of the first things that we did was cut our own budget. We knew that we had a $20+ billion shortfall. Now that's not a deficit because we don't do deficit spending protection. We have that balanced budget, and we have to balance the budget. But we didn't have as much money as we thought we needed, or at least as much as a lot of folks thought we needed. And so many of us went down, determined to balance the budget without raising taxes and without spending the $9 billion+ we had in the economic stabilization fund, the rainy day fund. And so the first thing we did was to demonstrate that by cutting our own administrative budget. And you know, it was lean for our staffers, but it was doable, and we did it. We passed a budget without spending the rainy day fund. We passed a budget. We were able to demonstrate that Texas led the charge in the nation for taking a deficit and still balancing the budget. And I believe that I have this right when I say that this was the first session that we were able to balance the budget with less money spent than the prior session. Now, wouldn't you like to hear that from the federal government?
Yeah, amen.
Less money this year than last year. I guess we'd have to hear we printed less money. That's probably a more accurate statement. But we did what everybody thought was impossible to do. And we not only did that by cutting spending, but we also were able to increase the amount that we spend in education. But some of the largest cries for spending the rainy day fund came from the education sector. And there's not a person that believes in public education more solidly than I do. I'm a product of public education, co-taught in public education. Our kids go to Como Picnic. They're going to a public school. But a sad statistic came on my desk, and it made me more resolved to really try to make sure that we spent money efficiently. 20 years ago, we had 7 teachers for every 3 non-teacher employees. Today, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. That means that 50% of every education dollar never finds its way to the classroom. And our graduation rates haven't improved. Our college readiness hasn't gotten any better. And so we took that as an opportunity to say, guys, there's fluff there that we can cut. So we passed some regulation that made it easier for local school districts to do hiring and firing and investing in teachers, and not make it not making being a teacher an entitlement. So we passed some good education reform. We passed a very much needed voter ID bill.
Amen.
You know, every vote that is cast by somebody who is not qualified to vote does 2 bad things. It is an unqualified vote that counts, and it negates a qualified vote. And that's one of the most sacred constitutional rights that we have. And we were bound and determined to make sure that we had reform in voter ID. We also passed a law that required you to show proof of citizenship in driver's license. That helps a lot. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of voter election reform that needs to be done. There's a group down in Houston that really began to look at voter registration. You know, all you have to do to register to vote is to call the registrar and ask for an application. She'll send an application. You fill it out. You swear that you're a citizen, and you send it back in. And without any further investigation, you get the voter registration card, voter ID card. You can go down and look. So this group in Houston started doing some research, and they found out that there was an accelerated volume of voter registration applications in a particular district in Houston. It happened to be the district of a very liberal congresswoman. And they started checking. They found this one address, for example, that had 12 applications from this particular address. And they went out to check to see who actually lived at this address, and it was an empty lot. So there's massive voter fraud going on. Not necessarily in voting booths, ultimately, but in the registration process. So we need reform in that area, and I know Empower Texas is looking at that as well. We passed a very strong sonogram bill that would require abortion doctors to show the person that is seeking to terminate a pregnancy through abortion to look at a sonogram of their child before they do so. It's a good day in Texas, because for those of us who are pro-life and we believe that life is sacred, that did a lot to quell a lot of abortions, because when a mother contemplating that kind of termination sees a sonogram of that baby, many times they'll choose an alternative. On the pro-life front, this is really good news. We basically became the first state in the United States to defund Planned Parenthood.
Amen.
That was a good day. And in the process, we saved about $75 million. I mentioned the budget. We passed some pretty strong tort reform to increase limit pay and to give the option for a dismissal. We strengthened eminent domain laws, which is a very important issue around these parts. We required that that it actually be a public use rather than a public purpose, which is a lot stricter requirement. We passed the provision that requires the condemnor to send a bona fide offer in writing to the landowner before eminent domain proceedings could be initiated. And we passed a provision that required that land be sold back to the original owner if it wasn't used for a public use within a 10-year period of time. So we're tightening that up because, we don't already have true property rights in Texas, but what rights we do have, we wanted to make sure we shored up the eminent domain and do that. We extended the $1 million franchise revenue tax exemption. We implemented Medicare managed care. Might surprise you to learn that there was some districts in South Texas that were opted out through some of the prior legislative sessions for Medicare managed care, which is a lower cost care for medical care. And it's massively expensive. By passing this managed care for some of these districts down in South Texas, we were able to save the state about $300 million. And when you have $100 million here and $100 million there, before long, it needs to add up to just pretty significant money. The good news about the whole money issue in Texas is that we had $180 billion to spend. That's a lot of money. Texas is the 11th largest economy in the world. So it wasn't like we didn't have a lot of money to spend. We just had a lot of people clamoring for the money that we had, and what we wanted was a bigger pie than what we had. So we had to make sure that we spent within our means. Isn't it remarkable that some of us actually wanted to go down and require Texas to do what Texans have to do, and that is live within our means. And that's what we were able to do. We passed an interstate health care compact resolution that would allow the federal government, if they will pass this in Congress, to block grant Medicaid money to us, because we believe that we can spend it better and more efficiently than the federal government. We can actually increase care, decrease cost if we get that money and block it. And we also recognize that since the federal government wasn't going to do what its job really is, and that is to protect the border, we spent over $87 million in increased funding to protect our border. My next desire on that front is to send a bill to the federal government since I passed back. But there was some things that I was involved in that we got done, and some things that we wanted to get done. I was on the corrections committee. That's prisons, parole, probation, and we were able to consolidate the Texas Youth Commission. You probably heard a lot of stories about that one with the Texas Juvenile Justice. And by doing so, that immediate consolidation resulted in about $3 million in savings, but closing down 3 to 4 of the Texas Youth Commission facilities saved us about $100 million.